North Park.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm an alcoholic. And I want to thank Larry for inviting me here to speak today. And I'm honored, and it's my privilege. And I wanted to congratulate our birthday boys. And most of all, I wanted to welcome our newcomers. And if I had thought, I was during my inebriation phase of my life, which comprised about 30 years of my life, if I thought during that time that there would ever be a day where I could piece together 3 days in a row of sobriety, much less, 3 months, 3 years, I never would have believed it. And much less if I had thought that I would be standing here talking to a bunch of people, more than 10 people, 30 people, 100 people, I never would have believed that. There was no amount of loaded that you could have gotten me to stand up in front of people and actually like it. And, and the fact that I'm sober and I actually like it, I'm amazed. And I never would have believed that. So just briefly, the story is that as a child, I saw other kids laughing. I saw them smiling. I didn't know how they did it. I tried to do it myself, and I didn't have a whole lot of success. I faked it, and I did it on self-will, and it wasn't successful. And then I discovered alcohol, and I started to feel like I was a little bit loose, and I could enjoy that. And before I was even of legal drinking age, I could not stop. I couldn't stop on my own power, and I was in rehab. And I developed a period of sobriety that I was really impressed with. And I got so impressed, I started to think, wow, maybe I did this on my own. And I had forgotten the part about alcoholism where I couldn't stop. So I went out and started drinking again. And once I started, I couldn't stop again. And I did not stop for 13 years. And during that time, I knew that I tried all the different methods that they talk about, taking a solemn oath, everything that the mind can tell oneself while they're drinking, little tricks that I played with myself. Maybe if I do it this way, maybe if I do it that way, I will control and enjoy my drinking. But that never happened, and I knew deep down that the only way that I was ever going to get sober again was through AA. So I needed to go to AA, and the only way I could get there was to get really loaded. So I did that, and I drove to AA. I was, as usual. And anyway, so I got to the AA meeting, and for some reason, at that time, I was able to see in the people's eyes that they were enjoying their sobriety. And I could see that they were actually happy in sobriety, and I wanted that, and I could see some hope this time. And I saw that the people in that meeting, they were really emphasizing doing the steps out of the big book. And once they had done that, they were emphasizing also taking on sponsees and showing those sponsees how to do the steps through the big book as they had done. And so it took me about 32 days to dry out, and once I went directly back to that meeting, and I asked somebody to take me through. And so that was different for me. The first time I had been in AA, I never really completed the steps. But this time I was really ready for some help. I knew that there was no hope for me. I had to hit, so many bottoms throughout this period of time. And I had lost basically everything that I found to be worthwhile in my life. And doing this first step the way that my sponsor had asked me to do it, instead of reading the big book and just kind of skimming over looking for topic sentences like I had done before, she let me know that that's not how it's done. The big book doesn't have topic sentences in the paragraphs. Each sentence actually has something to say, and each word in each sentence actually means something. So she took me word by word, line by line, page by page through the big book. And in the first step, I recognized that I wasn't an alcoholic merely because I couldn't stop. There was more to it. I couldn't stop because when I put that alcohol in my system, I developed a craving for more. That's the reason why when I got started 13 years ago, I didn't stop for 13 years. That's why when I told myself at night, I'm going to shut down at 1 a.m. so I can get to work at 8. And, days passed and I was still going, you know. I couldn't account for that for any other reason than that I had a craving that developed as soon as I put that alcohol in my system. The other part of the first step told me that, you know, I had an obsession of the mind. Whether I had alcohol in my system or not, I had a mental obsession. That was the part of my mind that was telling me, I'll sign a solemn oath, and that'll change my drinking entirely. I will now control and enjoy that drinking. Well, of course, I know that's a lie from all of my experiences. And so that obsession of the mind was another part. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to learn from learning these things through reading the big books this slowly. Wow, I'm not mentally ill. That's not the reason why I drink like this. It's because I actually have this disease of alcoholism. And, you know, it goes back to that childhood where I was restless, irritable, and discontent. And the big book tells me that's the basis of this disease. That restless, irritable, and discontent feeling, that's a spiritual malady. And because this disease is of a spiritual nature, it's going to need a spiritual solution. It tells me that the big book is going to show me how to get a spiritual solution if I follow the rest of the steps. And so that's what I decided to do. Now that I saw my hopeless condition and the reasons for it and how I fit into the book, just like all the other alcoholics that had written that book, I was able to say, I'm ready to go ahead and do whatever it takes to do the rest of those steps. And so I just stuck my nose into it and got started. And I was able to have an experience with each one of those steps that brought me closer and closer to knowing a higher power. And I didn't know that's what was going on at the time. I just knew that I was desperate enough to start doing what somebody else suggested instead of following my own ideas. And so in the second step, I read We Agnostics, and it told me that maybe I had some prejudices about God, the God concept, or a higher power that I was going to have to take a look at. And it showed me step by step how to do that and how to sweep away those prejudices, because I was going to need to get rid of those if I was going to actually come to know a God in a way that would be strong enough and deep enough to carry me through the rest of the steps and to get me a spiritual experience that was going to be deep enough to come between me and alcohol and my death. Then in step 3, I found that all I really needed to do was make a decision to go through the rest of the steps. I didn't need to turn over my will in my life right then. I just needed to make the decision. If I continued with the rest of the steps, I would get closer. An element of getting closer to turning my will over would happen one by one as the rest of the steps were completed. And in step 4, I completed an inventory. I did my resentments, an inventory on my fears, and on my sexual relations. And in my resentment inventory, I recognized, okay, so I've had some ill will towards some people. Some of it, I've had this ill will going on since 6th grade, right? Like, they could smile, I could not. I'm upset. And I'm still upset. I mean, it's been decades. And, but then I'm getting a snapshot as I go through each resentment that, like, wow, I'm not handling it much differently even today. And some of these resentments are from insobriety now, you know, and my techniques aren't that different. And they're not working for me any better than they're working for those guys, right? Then I started looking at my fears. And I recognized, like, it's because of these fears. My fears are what's making me act like this dick to all these people. It's because they behave some way and I get scared. So then I look at my sexy relations. With all those sexy relations, I recognize that those people have come into the relationship a lot happier than they walked out. Also, and I'm just going to get a little bit personal. My fears also had a little pattern. My biggest fears were that I would be alone or unloved. With all those sexy relations, they came in happy, they left unhappy, and I was still alone and unloved. In my 5th step, my loving sponsor and my loving God pointed out, hey, Lisa, this is you on your own will. If you keep living on your own will, guess what you're going to get? It's not going to be any better, any different. Your techniques are going to remain the same. You're going to be alone, unloved. You're going to have a resentful lifestyle, and you're going to be full of fear. on down the line. It is not going to get any better than this for you. So then, step 6, I was pretty willing to give it up to a God. And is that the chime?
No.
Oh, okay. Because it's not time. Okay. In the 7th step, I'm thrilled. I don't have to work on my character defects. All I have to do is give them away. And I'm ready now. I go ahead and I give them away. In the 8th step, I recognize that I've already found what harms I've done because I've written them out in my 4th step. So I don't really have to do much here. My harms are already on paper. And in the 9th step, I'm instructed by my sponsor, go ahead, pray, ask God to be with you on each of your amends. Go on the easy amends first, the ones you can do on your self-will, the ones that you're not so scared about. Pray before each amends and go. And then as I get to the scarier amends, I pray. I go to the amends. And when I get to the amends, what transpires there, I see at that time God loves me and is working in my life. This is where I'm starting to get the evidence that these steps have created a spiritual experience. I now have a connection where I have access to a higher power. If I call on that higher power actually responds to me because of what I've been doing as far as working in these steps. There's a journey and something that's taken place that I couldn't put my finger on. All I did was stick my nose in that book and do the work that was required of me. From there, I'm in step 10. I want to continue to take that personal inventory. I don't want to find myself stuck in that resentment. The book tells me that it will kill more alcoholics. And, I don't really want to die. I'm starting to like my life. Transformations have taken place inside my heart and inside my mind. My attitude's different. My heart can give out love, but more than that, it can receive love. My heart can take in love. I can feel joy in ways I've never felt joy before. So I want to continue to live this way. Then in step 11, it suggests prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God. That's what I need to do to keep this thing rolling. If I want to continue to live this life, I need to improve. So every day I do what I can to make sure that my conscious contact gets better and better and better. I don't just say, okay, God, I pray for the same people that I did last night, and you know what I'm grateful for, So take that. No. I improve. And I try to remind myself that because from time to time I get tired, want to go to sleep. And then and then the meditation, I make that a practice. And then with step 12, it's my turn to give it away. And then as far as practicing the principles in all of my affairs, like in my finances, can God take me further in my finances than I've ever been before? Before I turned over my finances to my higher power, I was always $178 short every month and scrambling, trying to figure out what happened. I turn over my finances to my higher power, and I have not been financially insecure, nor have I even thought about money since. I turned over my romances to my higher power, and I haven't had a boyfriend since. But God loves me. And I don't know how much time I have left, but that's kind of what's happened, and I continue to do the steps as needed, which is whenever my ego, resurfaces. So it's been more than once a year, and so that's been how I've been taught to do it. That's how I do it. My life is totally transformed, and it's mostly in my head, in my heart, that I see that I've transformed. Therefore, my outlook on life is transformed. So it's no longer you that's the problem, and that makes life so much easier to live. Before, all I was full of complaints. I was the most obnoxious human being known to mankind, or at least the people that knew me. And, because I was full of complaints. I couldn't stand anything, and I would be happy to let everybody know about it. And if I was miserable, which was all the time, then everybody else around me had to be miserable too. And things just are not like that anymore. And so much so that I've even been asked to speak in front of people. People aren't going to be miserable by listening to me talk. So I thank you so much for asking me to speak here today. It is my pleasure to give back to AA. AA has given me more than just my own life back. It's given me a life that I've never dreamed I could have. Thank you.